All right then, should be live. Just bear with me 1 minute. Should be live. Yeah, I've done it differently today, so I've actually recorded the videos already that I wanted to use. Oops. I actually recorded the videos already, so it kind of clears up my Sunday because I've got a load of cards I wanted to unbox. So that's going to be fun to do tomorrow, but that's second channel content, not main channel content. But yeah, that should be good. Should be good to go, hopefully. See, schools, yeah, schools, hospitals, courts as well. Any public sector building. Got more tech issues than GP. I've got no tech issues, man. You can hear me fine. I know you can. Yeah, you can hear me fine. There's no tech issues. I had to adjust my mic, so it might have the noise might have been a bit iffy there. But yeah. So there's a few downsides to this mic, to be honest with you, but we move. It should do fine for a while till I get the pro set up. But yeah, the whole thing is a disaster. But we'll get there. We'll get there in a few minutes. Probably towards the end of the stream. I forgot to check if there's any questions. Oh no, Casual Cooper's streaming at the same time. That guy's cool. Was there any questions here? No, that's from last week. What are we on? Oh, I haven't numbered this one like a moron. This is 15. There were no questions. Very strange. Live chat 15. But we'll move on to topics, unless there's anything specific anyone wanted me to discuss. It's the English accent that is bothering me. Mate, have you heard your accent? At least mine, like most people can understand it. So I wouldn't be dissing the old English accent. The Queen, I speak the Queen's English, don't you know? Governor. We speak the Queen's English round here. But yeah, it's not looking good for a lot of the schools and stuff. Well, not a lot. It's some of the schools. That material is pretty shoddy, to be honest with you. Oh no, I had the video. No, here it is. This is, we could discuss it now quickly. This is the material they're using.
So this is reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, which, to put another way, looks a bit like a certain type of chocolate bar. Very, very small holes that is designed to be light, easy to mould, and was extremely popular in public building projects after the war. But there's, we now know, a major...
So there was a big push to use more concrete in England. That's why a lot of the buildings look really ugly. But this stuff is worse than just being ugly.
The problem with this stuff, and it's this. It can crumble just like that. Now, experts say another problem is that these little holes allow the water to get into the concrete, and any rebar, this sort of stuff, this sort of stuff, concrete, and any...
Where is he filming?
Rebar, this sort of stuff, reinforced steel that's holding a building together, can easily decay. It's also very hard to spot that decay with this type of concrete. And that's really at the heart of what the problem schools are dealing with right now is.
So yeah, this stuff is it's not very good. It's not very strong.
So it's
not very stable. There's steel beams going through it, and obviously that's another different issue. But this aerated concrete, it's only allowed in non-structural walls. Yeah, it's in a lot of roofs, and things like that. And so you can kind of see it's built like Aero chocolate, and I love Aero chocolate, but I would not build anything with it.
We now know a major...
I don't think it's necessarily investment. I think it was the cheap option. A lot of I wouldn't be surprised if the government pushed this stuff to be used. Yeah, I don't think one of the people speak about it's not concrete though. Concrete is I'll be honest, I'm no Bruce Lee, but I reckon if I punch this, I reckon I could crack it. Like the way he breaks it, you know what I mean? Like if I punch concrete, my hand's gone. If I punch this thing, I think I'll go straight through it. Like genuinely. There looks like there's plasterboard stronger than this stuff. So you can see why there's so many problems with it. We'll discuss it kind of towards the end of the stream. Because it's kind of turn order, I guess. But I have done a dedicated video on it, and I will be discussing that. It will come out on the channel probably tomorrow. I don't know if I put the Braveman one out tomorrow, if I should put the other one out tomorrow. Or maybe I'll do the school one tomorrow. Even rebar sucks. I know very little about that kind of stuff, I'll be honest, but that concrete is just terrible. Post World War II material shortage. Are you sure? Because I saw during the 60s a big push for concrete to be used. Well, I didn't see it, but I heard stories about a lot of the push for massive amounts of concrete to be used, and so what that meant is they just use stuff like this. I don't know if it's down to really a material shortage. I work in construction. This is a cheap option and not for structural use. Yeah, damn. Yeah, stuff is garbage. It's garbage. It shouldn't be called concrete. The fact that it's called concrete is marketing. It's 70% air. Like, what? How are you going to use that for structural use? It don't make sense. If you can punch a hole in it, it should not be holding up a building. I'll be honest. It's cladding over time. Yeah, it's a different kind of disaster, really. I mean, if a roof caves in, then that's it. It's Django. No, like you're not going to survive that. It's going to be real bad. They have been aware of this problem since at least 2019, from what I've read. At least, kind of the scale of the problem, I guess. But they stopped using it back in the mid 90s, so they knew it wasn't great back then. But the problem was they didn't. I don't think they wanted to deal with it. Or at least they didn't do proper maintenance of it. That happened under the David Cameron government. Austerity. So yeah. If you want, we can get this out of the way now, actually. Let's just discuss this now. Yeah, so school buildings made of a certain type of concrete forced to close over safety concerns. So this is what the education minister actually said about it.
Just so you have the scale and the context, there's 22,500 schools. We're talking about 156. So most parents should not be worried about this at all. We've been having questionnaires, we've been having survey, we've done a lot of work on this
They literally asked the head teachers, does your school have this kind of construction? And the head teachers don't know, because obviously, some of them wouldn't have been born when this stuff was being put in.
The last few years. So most parents should not be concerned about this at all.
Courts, hospitals, probably a lot of the public sector buildings, to be honest.
But for those 156 schools, 52 already have mitigations in place, so they're already in place, and the 104 will be providing more updated information on the 104 as we get it. If they have RAC, what the mitigations are, and how we'll be contacting parents. The schools will be contacting.
So don't be concerned that the school that your kids study in could collapse. Don't be concerned about it. It's only 104. So don't worry about it. Honestly, it's just wow. Like, if parents should be concerned genuinely, like. Because you don't know, they haven't told you yet if it's your school that's been affected by it, your kid's school. So around 104 schools will be disrupted, on top of 50 that have already been affected this year. So 154, 100 will be impacted by it, 50 potentially, or 50 have been, 104 potentially. But they don't know the scale of the problem. That's the issue, because they're asking head teachers. They're asking head teachers, do you know if this is used in school?
They've known about the possibility of this for 5 years. Obviously, we've just heard that new information has come aboard over the last few weeks. However,
I mean, Sabine, if that happens to your kid is the most unlucky kid in the country, genuinely.
We've been asked about this since March. We had emails, asking for information about whether our schools were built with RAC materials. How would we know? We're head teachers and principals. We're not architects or construction specialists. So how would we know that? We wouldn't. As your specialist earlier said, it would be covered by suspended ceilings and plaster and everything else. It's not something we would know.
And this is the bigger problem for the Tories, because they will never find out the scale of the problem. Because if you're asking head teachers, does your school have this? They're going to be like, I don't know. And how would you even find out? Unless there's building records somewhere in the school of things that have been fixed and what they were using. I don't know. Yeah, I do see this as a growing issue, to be honest. When you put it in besides PPE, COVID payments, test and trace, the kamikaze budget, taxation, water treatment, the whole government looks like Batista's government in Cuba. I'm not familiar with Batista. The only Batista I know is the Batista bomb. The type of concrete forcing the closures, RAC we'll call it, for short, is the same type of concrete that's been found in some hospitals, have been deemed unsafe, prompting Barclay to fast-track them into the government's hospital building programme. And this whole thing has been exacerbated by the fact that the government just didn't put the money up to do maintenance on this kind of stuff. had they put it in a situation where the schools will manage to get rid of this stuff safely and replaced it with something else, we wouldn't be in this mess of schools potentially collapsing. But this is the penny pinching government. When it comes to anything public service, they penny pinch until they can give money to their friends. Have they asked what Mike Gray? Oh no, not the you can grow concrete guy. Jesus. Oh, that guy is something. I'm just gonna turn the light on quickly. That guy is just wow. He said it with chest as well. The video, so the guy who was being interviewed put the video up on YouTube. I think it's got over like 1 million views. Absolutely crazy. That guy is nuts. So it was used from the 1950s up until the mid-90s. So it could have been John Major who changed that. In comparison, rack to traditional concrete, rack is weaker, is made in factories, blah, blah, blah. Both material properties and structural behaviours differ significantly from traditional reinforced concrete. That's because this stuff isn't concrete. Thank you, Mithril, gifting 5 memberships to the people. Thanks, Mithril, that's really generous of you. I appreciate that a lot. That was very kind of you. Their incompetence is only outdone by their dishonesty. Genuinely, I think it's their malice. I think their malice is only outdone by their incompetence. Thank you, Mithril, though. That I really appreciate that. Both the material properties and structural behaviours differently. It is rack mainly from the 50s, 60s and 70s. That is the main concern, especially if it's not been adequately maintained. And we know it's not been adequately maintained because the Tories haven't done the maintenance on it. They cut the funding for it. I've got it mentioned here somewhere. See, the C for concrete is very misleading. Rack is 70% light. It's 70% air, and it's not very strong. So, we can see from the experts, they're saying this stuff is garbage. It's very evident there's a problem. The schools are going to have to pay out for this as well, potentially for having them fixed, which is nuts. And this is Michael Gove. Michael Gove, one of his first acts of Education Secretary in 2010 was to cut building schools for the future. He called it wasteful. This is what they did was they cut the school funding massively, and so head teachers diverted funds to education of kids rather than building maintenance, which makes a lot of sense short term. But at the end of the day, long term, the consequences of this are very problematic. But the schools didn't really have a choice, to be honest. It's not their fault, and that's why I don't think anyone should blame the schools. They should blame the government. 2 Welsh hospitals with rack identified. So this is an ongoing issue. There'll be more and more buildings with these issues. We spoke about this already. Let's see if this video
is a type of concrete that was used in buildings from around the 50s to the 90s. So any school that was built or modified in that may have used this. And
they're in advanced talks for a package to Tata Steel. Have we not given them enough money, Tata Steel?
Schools have been, over the last few years, doing a number of investigations and surveys to see if they have it. But the Department for Education have slightly changed tack on this today. They've said that as a result of careful analysis, they are taking precautionary and proactive steps to change their approach. So
the government being proactive? Nah. These guys are not proactive.
Any school where it is identified that in any building this type of concrete is used, those kids will have to move out. So before this, there could be mitigations.
Where are they going to move to? Unless they move to online learning. But again, this is going to cost the country massively. It's going to cost these kids an education. It's going to cost the schools money. It's going to cost the economy because parents are going to have to take days off work. This is so stupid. Any semblance of this being a part of economic literacy doesn't make any sense.
Place like it could be propped up with something if there was a wall or a ceiling that had it, but now no child or teacher will be allowed in that building, so that's a significant step today.
So it's completely shut off. These schools, some of these schools have been completely shut down. So you're talking well over a good few hundred kids. You're talking a good few hundred kids that are not in school. Like I don't what are the parents meant to do in this situation?
You have unions coming out saying that, this has been a situation for some time. There's
5
no real
years.
timeline on how
They've known about this since 2018.
Will be replaced. They're saying that it's particularly bad timing, especially with children back to school next week. Although the Department for Education have said, this is quite a small number of schools that are being affected.
Okay, yeah, it's fair enough. It's a small number of schools, but it's a decent number of them. Over 100 schools being affected by this is nuts. And head teachers in a weekend dash to make schools open and safe. They're desperately looking for places where they could, where there's no issues, so they could teach kids. This is just disastrous for kids that have been impacted by COVID. Now going to be impacted potentially by this. It's just genuine incompetence. Or it's just this is what they want to do. They wanted to shrink the state, and they got what they wanted. This is an impact of austerity. This is an impact of the Cameron government. For anyone to kind of rehabilitate these older Tories that were kind of pro-Remain and aren't as bad as the other Tories, it's just nuts. None of them are good. Let's be honest now. Some are better than others, but none of them you can say, this guy, he's a good Tory. It just doesn't exist. Even the Lib Dems, this is part of their legacy as well. They were in the coalition government. They played a part in this. There's a lot of blame to go around here. And it's not being put in the right places, which is Gove, Cameron, Osborne, Nick Clegg, arguably. These are the people that should be blamed for the situation we are in now, in my opinion. So, Baroness, loads of money, just brought a yacht. Again? She bought another one? Really? She bought another yacht? What are the voting options in the UK, Madge? There's not many, to be honest. Depends where your seat is. It depends which part of England you're in as well. It depends, like many things. But if you're telling people to vote Labour no matter what, then you are losing any leverage that you have over the Labour Party. You'll lose any and all leverage. And that's an important thing to remember. Even if you're desperate to vote for the Lib Dems, if you say you'll vote Lib Dem no matter what, you will lose any leverage that you have. And they will not listen to you because your vote's a lock. That's the thing you got to remember. You can never own enough yachts. Are you speaking from personal experience? But yeah, we'll go on to some... actually, this would be... This would have been topical elsewhere. Frustration. Anyways, we'll talk about good old Richard Ticey.
Is on the easier stuff, where you've agreed. And
it's about the context of trade deals.
That obviously varies from country to country. So get something done, build some confidence, and then move on to round 2 and round 3, and see if you can work it that way. So it'll be the Indian negotiators will be...
If they don't openly commit to policies of reform, then what's the point? I mean, there isn't a point, really. You're voting for Capital Team B, as people pointed out, or Red Team Austerity, and that's up to you. That's it depends on what you believe in. If you believe in slight harm reduction, or if you think if you want to say, well, Labour haven't done good enough to earn my vote, it's up to you. And I wouldn't blame you either way for making any other decision. I'm not like some of the other people in the space. I think if you don't vote Labour because you don't believe in any of the things they're saying, I don't blame you. How many trade deals has Tice done? A bit different from stifling someone. Well, that's an allegedly. I'm going to throw in there. Neo-Labour, as you said last week. I mean, yeah, that's what they are. That's what they are. That's why I did that stream with No Justice, because I was frustrated with the Labour Party, and I did want to discuss it with someone. I'll be honest, because I don't know what to make of them. That's the problem. I don't like what they've become, and I don't feel as if I should support them. Not openly. Not one of these people who says we need to get put in the Labour Party no matter what. Like, I don't believe in that. I think Labour should have to commit to at least trying to improve people's lives. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is people are going to ask me, right? Because this is what always happens, like during elections for the last probably since 2015, right? Because I'm a politics nerd, and my family know I'm a politics nerd. So they'll ask me questions like, who should I vote for and why? How am I supposed to say vote Labour because the Tories suck? Like, I can't explain that to them. The only thing I can explain that is like, yeah, they're both a bit crap, but you want to vote for the one that's not as bad. But that's not gonna win people over. Now, I wish I could be more kind of public and say, yeah, the Labour Party are a good option. They're a good option, but I don't believe that. I don't believe they are a good option. I believe they are better than the Tories by a bit, not by a ton, by a bit. Like, if you're going to keep in things like the 2-child policy, if you're going to keep in things like not changing capital gains tax, not raising taxes on the rich, not doing massive reforms and increasing the amount of council housing, what's the point? Like, why would I vote for you? It doesn't make any sense.
Arguing for many, many more visas than I suspect.
Why do they want so many? Why do they want so many?
Look, that's because there's a big Indian community here in the UK.
Yeah.
And they will be pushing for it. Very successful business community. So you can understand why they're pushing for it.
It's not just that. It's, India would make a lot of money from remittance payments, people sending money back home. It's a good route of people to get out of poverty, things like that. There are reasons why India would push for more visa access. You can get more workers who have bigger kind of Western credentials, I guess, which would be better regarded. So they can, when they go back, if they go back to India, they can say, like, I've worked for such and such a Western company, and they might be seen as more prestigious. Lots of different reasons. But
equally, the role of the government is to look after British citizens and to make sure that any trade deal works for the United Kingdom. And what my concern about is, frankly, given what we're seeing about the quality of the civil service all over the place, the quality of our negotiators being out-negotiated, as we all fear, frankly, we have been with the European Union. I mean, it's not civil servants' fault, it's the government's fault, because they set stupid deadlines and they put us in a position where we are doing negotiations from a place of weakness, not from a place of strength. These other countries, they see us as, if we get a deal, that's good. If not, I don't care. Whereas we see it as we have to get these deals because we need optics wins. That's the difference. It's just not. They're not good. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna like say to people, vote Labour because they're great. Yeah, they also got Frost to negotiate, which wasn't very good. I'll be honest. He got melted in negotiations. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, the stream last week was a bit of a marathon, to be honest with you. I don't know how I lasted that long. But yeah, it's one of those things where I've been thinking about a lot of Labour stuff for a while, and I wasn't sure what to make of it, if that makes sense. I wasn't sure how to kind of explain it to people. That's the problem I had. I just, it's very difficult to kind of, or for me to articulate, because I just don't like them. I want to like them, but I don't like them. That's the issue I have with what's going on right now. And ironically, we are going to discuss Labour switching from light to dark, so be prepared to be blinded. But Rachel Reeves has ruled out any version of a wealth tax or any tax increases. There was a graphic, actually, I should have used that. This is probably better. Rachel Reeves says no wealth tax, no tax on high value properties, no increase to the top rate of income tax, no capital gains tax hike, or even reform to capital gains so it's equal with income tax, which they really should have done. None of that's going to happen. This makes me very, very annoyed. And if you look at the paper she gave it to, which was the Telegraph, you can see who she's trying to appeal to. And I think her words that she said in the past might come back to bite her a bit on this, depending on if the journalists actually do their job. But we don't know if journalists can actually do their job in this country. We do see glimpses of good stuff, but for the most part we see a lot of mediocrity and just poor journalistic performances. So I don't have a lot of faith in it. Maybe it's because she's gone for more the Karen haircut. Maybe that's what's changed. I don't know. But, we do know one thing for certain. There is absolute proof to say if you rely on food banks, you're likely to do worse at your GCSEs. So already kids in poverty already are at a massive disadvantage. So, instead of wanting to lift kids out of poverty to give them the best opportunity that they can at life, equality of opportunity, the Labour Party are not about that life. Starmer saying he wouldn't be able to go to university if he'd been 18. Let's have a listen, actually.
Cost of living crisis that we're now living through were the position when I was just picking up my A-level results. Then I don't think I would have been able to afford to go to university.
I do remember a Labour leadership candidate called Keir Starmer pledging to abolish tuition fees just 3 years ago. What?
And what the problem is, what they're talking about is two different things here. Starmer is talking about the cost of living crisis, so the cost of just general living, whilst what's his face? O'Brien is talking about tuition fees. There's two different conversations they're having here.
What happened to that?
Yeah, well, look, I do think the current scheme is unfair and ineffective, and that's why we will change it. So the current scheme...
Change it to what, though? You guys have had months, a couple of years to figure it out now, and you've said you're not going to abolish tuition fees, so what are you going to change it to?
Will be changed by an incoming Labour government, and we'll set out our plans. But there's no getting away from the fact that in the intervening years, the last 2 or 3 years, huge damage has been done to our economy, and we therefore cannot make funding commitments that we can't, costs that we can't show where the funding is coming from. We know if you...
So in a situation where schools are potentially going to collapse, right, and hospitals and courts, where are you going to find the money to fix all of these things? Because again, if you convince people that borrowing to invest is a good idea, then you're right. Then you have to just convince people the investments were the right things to do. If you continue on this rhetoric of we need to be fiscally responsible and we can't borrow money and blah blah blah, you're going to get nowhere real fast, and you will not make that. You will not succeed economically.
You look at what Liz Truss did. She experimented with, unfunded commitments. In her case, it was tax breaks for the wealthy, and you saw the impact on the economy.
Again, and this is the other thing that annoys me. It's a lot of people pushing economic illiteracy, especially Starmer talking about, it wasn't the fact that Liz Truss didn't break the economy by pushing unfunded pledges. It was the fact that she was going to borrow money for tax cuts, and investors looked at it and said, how are you going to make a return on that? And she said, trust me, bro. And they said, I don't trust you. And that was it. That's why they started selling government bonds. So it's silly, the idea that he's pushing here that borrowing money or whatever causes unfunded promises. It's not that. We borrowed ridiculous amounts of money during COVID. Where were the markets like, nah, we out, bro. We're not gonna buy these bonds. It's just silly. This is so silly. I mean, yeah, but O'Brien won't call it out. O'Brien won't call it out because I think he wants personal vindication. If Starmer wins, he will feel personally vindicated by it. Even though we saw a centre-left candidate in Ed Miliband run in 2015 and he didn't win. So the argument of it's centre-lefties that win all the time is just nonsense. This is pretty brutal.
This would lift 250,000
about ending the two-child cap.
million children out of poverty. No, according to the Child Poverty Action Group.
I do understand
it would
that.
also lessen the poverty for around 850,000 other children, which would ease the pressure on those families. It sounds like a lot, but actually in a budget, a government budget, 1.3 billion is a drop in the ocean, frankly.
It's nothing for central government. That amount of money is pocket change.
It is something you could so easily promise.
Well, it's really important that everything that we put forward is fully costed and fully funded.
This would lift a quarter.
It's not even true about the fully costed and fully funded thing, but all she's saying to his kids is, sorry kids, we can't afford it. It's the compassionate conservative argument. Is if only we could do something about it. And we know funding for kids has dropped dramatically since New Labour.
Before you came into power in 2010, we had reached a high in terms of the amount of money that was being spent per pupil. That was £7,260. Now, according to the IFS, since 2010, that dropped in real terms to reach £6,640 per pupil. So you may say you're putting more money in, but it's still a lot less than it was before 2010.
And this is the Tories' kryptonite. It's spending per capita, per pupil. That's the biggest weakness that this lot have.
We look at real terms per pupil. I keep saying this, but you've been in power for 13 years. Why are you still trying to put what it looks like plasters on this issue?
No, on the contrary, the education reforms have been a huge success. When we came into power in 2010, 68% of schools were good or outstanding. Today...
And he's answering a completely different question. The question is about pupil funding, and he answers the question he wants to answer, but, Adil Ray is right to point this out. It's about per pupil funding. This is what it's about, per capita spending. And yeah, that's it. Why do you need to set the... it's just, this is just abysmal from Labour. Like, if you guys ever wonder why I get annoyed at them, it's because of stuff like this, especially when they know the system is crap. Look at this.
A fairer system of taxation. If you go out to work and you're paying income tax and national insurance, you're paying more tax than if you make an income from speculating on the stock market, or if you're getting income from a portfolio of buy-to-let properties.
I'm telling you, it must be the haircut. Something changed when she got just the shorter hair, but austerity is a political choice, as Grace Blakely points out, it's Capital's B team. It's the job of Starmer and Rachel Reeves to shore up support for the status quo, and that's what they're doing. I'm not going to vote for George Osborne Light. I'm just not going to do it. More from Rachel Reeves talking about why these policies, why these things she's pushing now is bad.
How can it possibly be right that the police constable on £27,000 a year should be taxed at 32 pence in the pound, but someone making many times more from buying and selling stocks and shares should pay just 20 pence in the pound? That will not stand under Labour.
This will not stand under Labour, and this is not one they can argue, it's going to cost money or anything like that. This is not one they can argue that, we can't do this because they bankrupted the economy or whatever. What they did try and argue is, we've got the highest tax burden in 50 years. Highest tax burden on who? Because the answer is middle and lower earners. That's who the tax burden is on. This is something that's easy to fix for them, but they just don't want to do it, and I don't get why. She added that, in terms of the wealth tax, it would raise about £12 billion. So she's saying, I don't need a wealth tax or any of those things. We don't have plans for a wealth tax because they don't have spending promises. They don't need to raise any more money for spending promises. It would cost £1.3 billion to get these kids out of poverty. 250,000 kids, 250,000. £1.3 billion. Not to mention the impact it would have on the economy, which would be positive. On the children themselves and their parents would be absolutely positive, especially for the future of these kids. One second. These would be positive if Labour just don't want to do it. So why would I back Austerity Team Red? If there's anyone here in the comments that are so pro Starmer or pro Labour, like, genuinely convince me, why would I vote for Capital Team Red or Austerity Team Red? Genuinely, why would I do it? Come on. Starmer, first pledge, economic justice, says increase income tax for the top 5% of earners, reverse the Tories' cuts in corporation tax, and clamp down on tax avoidance. Now, they've changed their tune on corporation tax because Sunak said Sunak's actually raised it, and Labour were against that. No stepping back from our core principles. Boy, has he stepped back from his core principles. Ooh, has he stepped back? He's stepped back pretty far from his core principles. This one from Marina Perkis, who you'd think is a bit more intelligent than this, saying, quote, I once had a friend who wouldn't let the guy she was dating see her without makeup until in case he went off her. She finally did when they were official, and that's what I'm hoping the Labour strategy is, end quote. And this is the most stupid... This is some of the worst analysis I've seen from someone who's meant to be on the left. This is just cope. That's what this is. This is absolutely 100% cope. That she's saying, well, I hope Labour aren't as bad as they seem to pretend to be. Like, really, you're saying, here's my vote, guy, and hopefully you do the right thing in the end. Genuine, this is the most pathetic level of analysis I've ever seen. No, fair enough, it's on Twitter, but that's one of the worst takes I've seen from someone who's meant to be on the centre left. But that's what you get from people who just got involved in politics after Brexit. Genuinely, just a lot of people are just very politically naive and unaware. You even got Chuck Grassley Big Grassley, Chuck Grassley. How's the American? Chuck Grassley saying, "Senate Dems wake up and take a cue from British Labour Party." Read Shadow Chancellor Exchequer Rachel Reeves interview in Telegraph. No tax increases, no wealth tax. She's for wealth creation. She feels you don't tax your way out of economic prob. You grow your way out. Very Reagan-esque. Really? She sounds like Ronald Reagan. Oh damn. I'm guessing Mario is running down the stairs in that picture. When you're being compared to Ronald Reagan, there is a problem. If your economic policies are being compared to Ronald Reagan, there is a big problem. You sound like Swiss Tony. Who's Swiss Tony? Is this person worth Googling? Who is Swiss Tony? That is the question I asked the audience. I sound like Swiss Tony. But yeah, when you're getting praised by Chuck Grassley, this argument of just grow the economy, bro. Like, how do you grow the economy? They don't have any answers. I despair at this level of just simplicity of just get Brexit done. Just grow the economy, grow the pie. Remember, we kept hearing that you can't share more of the pie. You have to grow the pie. I'm like, oh no, please stop. And luckily it did, because Liz Truss was booted out. But my big fear is Labour trying to appeal to these sorts of people who are absolutely insane.
Unfortunately, Keir Starmer has still got the bunch of idiots on the front bench that were there in 2019. We're not stupid, the British public. We will not put them in charge at all.
I mean, the British public put Boris Johnson in charge, so I'd say you're pretty stupid.
I think he's got quite a different front bench, though, to the one that Jeremy Corbyn had in 2019. He's a very different leader to Jeremy Corbyn as well.
Well, he was there. He was the Brexit man, wasn't he? He actually, Mr. Keir Starmer, caused this massive loss for the Labour Party with his Brexit stance. He is the cause for this. We do not trust this man. He changes his colours more times than a chameleon. We don't trust you, Labour. We know what you are. We won't vote for you.
Who is we?
What about Rishi Sunak then, James? What do you think of Rishi Sunak?
Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Liz Truss wasn't given...
That's one of the core things of that plagues England. This saying here that people seem to live and die by in this country.
What do you think of Rishi Sunak?
Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Is it, though, when the devil you know is pretty bad? Or would you say the one you don't know is worse? Honestly, that's the kind of thing that's been plaguing this country for a long time now.
Liz Truss wasn't given the chance and the market's got...
Bro, she wasn't given the chance. You want to give her more time for the market to implode?
Rid of her. Unfortunately, we weren't given the chance because the banks and the markets decided she was to go before we were to have that chance. And if we had Boris Johnson in again...
His brothers looks like he's having Vietnam flashbacks or something. He regrets taking the school.
I would, without a doubt, vote for that man.
So you'd vote for Boris Johnson,
Yes, I would.
who partied in number 10 during COVID, and you'd vote for Liz Truss, who crashed the markets. But you
No, she didn't crash the market. It was
well, it was her policy. It was but they were reacting to her policy.
Because she was going to do actual things for the people of this country, and the people who hold the money.
If the banks thought that was a good idea, why wouldn't they have faith in that?
So at the end of the day, we do not trust the Labour Party. They are wolves in sheep's...
This bro got dementia. Why does he keep saying we? Is he Venom?
Closing. We remember what you did, and when we campaign, it'll all come out again. And Keir, unless you get those seats in Scotland, you will not be in power.
But it doesn't sound like
If he does get the seats in Scotland, he is still not a sure bet.
you trust Rishi Sunak and his team either at the moment.
Well, as I said, better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
It's not great vote of confidence, though, is it?
Paul,
If you think that he's a devil, he's just less devilish than the other devil.
I'm going to need a therapist after listening to this, honestly.
It's not a great vote of confidence in Rishi Sunak,
But unfortunately, that's the best we got, Paul, because the Labour Party, with Keir Starmer and the bunch of communist rebels that are in there.
Communist rebels. He thinks General Mao is running the Labour Party. He's there with bank robber Stalin and General Leon Trotsky. Like, genuinely, these people are insane. And I've got a feeling Labour are trying to push the boat out and appeal to these guys who are probably going to vote for reform. They're probably going to vote for reform, I'll be honest. You know, if I was one of these lunatics, that's probably who I'd vote for. I wouldn't vote Tory, given the mess that they've made. I'd probably vote reform if I was a complete brain-dead idiot. You had Grant Shapps getting pelters. This one's pretty good.
That doesn't mean that this appointment is not controversial amongst some, perhaps those who care a little bit more about the defence and security brief. Let me bring you the words of one backbench Tory MP.
Yes, we do. There are a lot of people like that in the UK. Yes.
Unsurprisingly, they don't want to be named, and so they can be a little bit bolder. So you have to remember they're not choosing to put their name against this quote, but nevertheless, let me read it to you. Grant Shapps is such an uninspired...
He's going to have to appeal to the hard right to win. To win a majority, he's going to have to appeal to the hard right.
...choice as Defence Secretary. This man doesn't get across...
Wait, are you talking about Starmer or are you talking about Sunak? Which one are you talking about?
And only cares about photos and gimmicky press releases. What a wasted opportunity by Rishi, who could have appointed somebody of substance. I was reading that for the first time. Fairly punchy.
Someone of substance. Oh, okay, Big Ben.
Quote from somebody not willing to put their name to it. You have to bear that in mind. Easier to be much harsher. Points nasty if you're giving an anonymous.
I heard his name was Michael Green.
Nevertheless, that is the view of one. Let me give you the view of just one more, because there is some disquiet about the fact that they've put somebody with no obvious experience or really even interest in this brief.
Having someone who has no experience in the military as MOD, the Minister for the Ministry of Defence, that's not that bad. Having someone who has no interest in kind of the military is not great, to be honest. I guess it'd be worse if you had someone who wanted to cosplay themselves playing in the military, but yeah, you know, even Ben Wallace has question marks over his kind of career.
In this brief. Here we go. Another Conservative MP who was not willing to put their name to it, just went, he sold encyclopedia.
Yeah, Ben Wallace a bit of a moron. After what happened with that dude, that Irish unionist guy, Ben Wallace pulled his leadership bid. So, you know, there's clearly some sort of monster hiding around him.
It's a joke, given that we're at war. Ukraine's at war, and
what's wrong with selling encyclopedias? Like, surely, you support entrepreneurial spirit. What's wrong with selling encyclopedias?
Assisting them, and then you put somebody like that 12 months before an election into that job. You could have had. There were lots of options.
Yeah, probably he'll make a decent chunk out of the contracts, or he'll get a job in the defence industry.
You could have had Anne-Marie Trevelyan, who
Anne-Marie Trevelyan, like she's failed in all of her ministerial jobs as well.
Has had experience in the military. Penny Mordaunt. I think there's
Penny Mordaunt. Really, she's more obsessed with herself than anything else. Penny Mordaunt.
Some disquiet amongst
Wallace knew his job. That one of the what are Ben Wallace's feats as defence minister? Has he improved the military? Has he got the military into better shape than it was? Because from what I've read about it, it's an absolute disaster because of all the spending cuts. So can you say what are Ben Wallace's feats apart from getting weapons to Ukraine and enriching defence contractors? What has Ben Wallace achieved as the minister? Genuine question, Andrew Luke. Because he talks well. That's about it. If you want to talk a big game, there are a lot of ministers who could probably do that. But if you want to talk about actual achievements and feats, I'm not seeing him. When was he transportation secretary? He put on a real act and was upset with. Oh yeah, I remember. I covered that the other day. Yeah, he was real upset with P&O ferries. He used that weird green screen to show that he's in different parts of the country. So yeah.
Those in the Conservative Party, even senior figures who have an interest in defence and foreign affairs, that there isn't somebody more of their type in the MOD right now walking into that job.
Who was there before Ben Wallace? Who was there before Ben Wallace? I think it was a decent minister they had. I can't remember. I can't remember who it was. This was an interesting video. So this is from Newsnight and Liz Webster. Now, Liz Webster's kind of interesting because she's pushing for the UK to rejoin the single market, which obviously we know on this channel can't happen. We can't just rejoin the single market. We've discussed that a lot. But at least it's kind of getting it pushed out there that the UK is just not in a good position being outside of the EU. I think that's the broader conversation that I hope that we will have. The tarantula guy. Oh, it could have, oh, yeah. Chris something, I think his name was. Gavin Williamson, that's the tarantula guy. There you go, it's Gavin Williamson. It was, Gavin Williamson was the spider guy. Was he the former defence minister? He was education, I think.
Well, look, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? There's no answer.
Yeah, I mean, the choices were trash. But point being is, like, you know, who was good? Just not many of them, but, you know, he had better options than a guy who just pushes the Tory tagline. That's all he does. That's his biggest achievement in government.
To this, as it stands with Brexit, yes, it's a relief for consumers because of inflation and the cost of living crisis, but it's an
So this is about them delaying import checks again.
Absolute catastrophe for British farming and British food and British food security. I mean, it's like expecting your football team, your British football team, to go and compete.
We don't have a British football team.
In international football with chains around their legs. We've got so much burden on us, no help. Food globally is under a lot of stress. We rely on Europe to feed us, even more now than ever.
You welcome these delays, then?
Mordaunt was defence minister before Wallace. Really? I thought there was a dude. All right, give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to let this carry on playing, but...
Do welcome them, but I don't. And as I said, I don't welcome... it's both. I can't answer. I mean, what I would say, and what I would say to Nick, is the answer is to get back in the single market and free us up, because there are no advantages to Brexit whatsoever, particularly for food production and food security and public health.
I'm sure your farming colleagues, they can't abide EU farmers having free access to the UK, whilst the reverse is not true.
I mean, as I said, it's a double-edged sword. I feel sorry for consumers.
It was indeed. It was Penny Mordaunt. Oh, okay, so Penny Mordaunt was there for... Let's see, I'll bring this up quickly. You're right, it was Penny Mordaunt. So we've had a lot, to be fair. You got Grant Shapps now. You had Ben Wallace, Penny Mordaunt, who was there for 2 months. Gavin Williamson, he was there for a while. Theresa May got rid of him. 2 months, 23 days. Michael Fallon, don't remember him. Philip Hammond, he went to the Treasury after that, I believe. No, he wouldn't have done. No, he went to Treasury later on. Liam Fox, Bob Ainsworth. I don't recognise any of these Labour guys, to be honest. John Reid. I wonder, is he related to Steve Reid? Do you reckon he's related to Steve Reid? Geoff Hoon. How many have you got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 under New Labour. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you had more defence ministers under the current crop of Tories than you had under New Labour, who've been in charge for around the same time. So that's pretty interesting. All right, cool. I didn't know it was Penny Mordaunt. That's cool. They never seem to. Yeah, I get that. And to be fair, at least what I'd rather see is at least us have the conversation about why Britain is struggling right now. That's the only way we can kind of move on and kind of discuss kind of trying to get back into the EU somehow, or at least acknowledging the fact that outside the EU things are not going well at all, and that by leaving has made things considerably worse. At least then, you know, the country can be honest about the position we're in, rather than us saying, oh, because we didn't Brexit hard enough. Steve Reid was Northern Ireland Secretary of State for a while. Oh, John Reid, sorry. Steve Reid is he's a Waste man. John Reid, Scottish Labour MP. Okay.
Facing more inflation, and I feel really sorry for us farmers on a very unfair playing field. Added to which, gene editing is no benefit to us in Britain right now because of Brexit. And gene editing is no advantage to us if we're not producing any food. Right now, our farmers cannot afford to produce food. We're not subsidised any longer. European farmers are. Many other farmers across the world are subsidised. And these products are coming in, undercutting us, and we are not able to afford to produce food. Well, all of the support they've offered us has been
shaking
withdrawn.
His head, but we,
you know, and that's it. You know, I think it's more than they've just, you know, that kind of the EU farmers can export easier into the UK than, you know, UK farmers can export into the EU. I think it's because we've lost our export market. That's the main problem. We've lost the export market, and the British market won't make up for the losses. You know, you can't just sell more meat in the UK because it will reduce the price, and obviously they don't want to do that because it's not affordable for them. Losing their subsidies, it sounds like a massive problem as well. If I remember correctly, gene editing was outlawed in it. It's not fully outlawed, but it's really hard to do, and you need a lot of special dispensation to do it. So it's one of those things where you can do it, it's not worth your time to do it. And there are rules around where it can be exported to as well. So it is possible to do it. It's very difficult though. This from Nick Timothy Simmons.
So people will appreciate some clarity on this, Nick Thomas Simmons. So I mean,
Nick Thomas even. The answers he gives here are pretty ludicrous.
Example, will you be prepared to accept some sort of EU law, European Court of Justice oversight here, which would open up the possibility of really eradicating most of the checks?
So that's good framing there. It's a bit dodgy with the kind of the way he kind of framed the EU court, but point being is like the UK. If the UK could get something, would we accept the ECJ? And obviously, knowing the ECJ is a bit of a hot topic amongst gammons.
Well, we would be seeking to have, as you would in any trade arrangement, some sort of body that oversees it. The EU has been very creative in these things previously. Take a look at the previous agreements that they've made, where you can have joint committees that oversee it. You can have
overall, it would be the ECJ that oversees it. You know, you can't hold up the what's it called, the Windsor framework as kind of, you know, look how flexible the EU have been on this, therefore they will be flexible on everything. The situation in Northern Ireland is very, very unique, and you know, Ireland being a member state, the EU will of course have to be flexible on that, but on broader topics, you know, like getting an equivalency deal, the EU ain't going to give us that dog.
A role for our courts too, so that's obviously a matter for the negotiation, but the central purpose of the negotiation is to go into it and to say to people, look,
fast show,
we want to get that food onto your tables as quickly as possible. We're talking not just about meat, but about cereals, about fruits, about vegetables, all of which are going to end up being more expensive as a consequence of these checks.
Okay.
We want to minimise those checks to help people.
How are you going to minimise the checks? Without dynamic alignment, you won't be able to do it. Sure, if you raise our standards, the EU might look at it and say, we can do less checks on your goods because you have high standards, which they are doing now, by the way. But for the most part, you're not going to get anywhere.
who are struggling out there with their bills right now.
But Nick Thomas, this is about trade-offs, though, isn't it? If you want to go for minimal checks, even no checks of the sorts you've just criticised in 3D, you'll have to go for, like, no divergence from EU laws on things like gene editing or fertilisers. Are you happy with that trade-off? You're not interested in divergence, are you?
Well, we're certainly not interested in a race to the bottom on standards, whether it's on the environment, whether it's on food standards, or indeed in other areas like workers' rights. But if you look, for example, at the New Zealand equivalence model, under the New Zealand model, it is correct to say there are still checks, but the
again, you know, he's pushing this stuff, and I'll cover it in the video that I've got coming out on it. Is we've heard this from Frost. We've heard this from Frost about the equivalency agreement, and even Lord Frost has called this out multiple times on Labour's part. Hi, Leeds. What has happened is that the UK, or at least people within the Labour Party, seem to think that because New Zealand have an equivalency deal with the EU, it means we should get one because we're a much bigger entity than New Zealand. But the problem is because of our size, we won't get one because we are competing more with the EU. We're competing more with the EU farmers. And because of the way equivalency is set up, if we have lower standards in certain areas than the EU, we can undercut their farmers. And the whole point of the EU is it's a protectionist bloc. So why would they allow us that opportunity of a big competitor to do that? Especially when there are chances where we might deregulate in certain areas, even if we got an equivalency deal. And so that puts the whole thing, it makes the whole thing pointless. Absolutely pointless. So, you know, what he is arguing for is absolutely snake oil, and we should call it out. We should 100% call it out.
Physical checks are down at around about 1%. So you can be very creative in this negotiation as to how you minimise checks. What you can't do is what this government has done and essentially stood to one side, not actually attempt to negotiate a veterinary agreement. And indeed, is it any surprise when you see the way
they did try to get a veterinary agreement? Like, this bro is capping so hard, and Faisal Islam should have jumped in here. This is what annoys me about British journalists and hosts. Like, how do you not know this stuff? Genuinely, like, this is your area. You've set up this whole thing, right? You've invited this guest on. You've set up this topic. How, you know, Faisal, like, you either don't know or you haven't done your job properly. And this is a guy I respect. Like, he should have been straight in there and said the EU have said no to an equivalency agreement. And, you know, Nick Thomas Simmons could come out and say, well, it's a negotiation. It's like, cool, you know, if I go to the Bugatti store and say, look, I'll give you £5 for a Bugatti, they're going to say no. And I'm like, well, it's a negotiation. We'll see what happens. It's just silly. This is so silly.
way they've been churning through prime ministers and government ministers, and the way that they've been willing previously to make agreements and then break them with the EU, that they find themselves in the position they do.
That's not even true, though, because they didn't get an equivalence agreement from the start. This was before any of the kind of the breaking, really, of any of the agreements. That happened after. So what he's talking is absolutely not. He's just rewritten history just in front of our eyes. Silly geezer. This is pretty funny as well.
I'm very interested, because there's a sovereign choice now, isn't there, in terms of where you land, the closeness of the relationship. And the benefit for people on your side of the argument, was it not, was, you know, divergence, maybe different rules on gene editing or different types of fertiliser. It doesn't seem, I'd be interested to know what you think about this, the government's vigorously pursuing that in this area. Therefore, what's the point of the trade barriers?
Well, you're wrong. We've passed an act legalising gene editing. It was actually supported by the Labour Party and through...
Now, is it true that the Labour Party supported the Gene Editing Act? Let's see. Oh, it's the British Veterinary Association. Here we go. Labour signals support. It supports the use of gene editing in animals, despite, you know, Nick Thomas Simmons being very unclear on it. Apparently, the Labour Party has signalled it backs the move by the Conservative government to make it easier to gene edit animals and plants in production, but says it will be tabling amendments to draft legislation in the hopes of bolstering legislation. So, you know, the Labour Party supports some form of gene editing. Yeah, very bright those people are. Yeah, you know, that's a good question. How can the UK hope to get equivalency despite doing that? I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue Labour will scrap the New Zealand, the UK-Australia deal, maybe. The UK was offered a Swiss-style SPS alignment agreement, but turned its nose at it. Not New Zealand. Yeah, the UK wanted the New Zealand-style deal. The EU said no. The EU offered the Swiss-style deal, and then we said no. That's what happened.
Through gritted teeth, the Lib Dems at the end. They would have to scrap that if we were to go back into the single market, as effectively they're arguing. So we have moved in that direction. I would like to go even further and a wider range of things, but we have done so. And to pretend that we could keep that and enter into some kind of Swiss-style barrel, the entire EU rules on food and food products is a dream, an illusion.
He is right. We can't go for the deregulation and hope to get any kind of alignment with the EU. But
the EU won't let us do it. They won't even give us what they've given New Zealand because they want to punish us for leaving.
And that's where he goes off the rails a bit. You know, like, again, it's just business, and that's what a lot of British people fail to understand. Like, there's a reason why they won't give us an equivalency deal. It's not personal, it's business. If it was beneficial for the EU to give us such a deal, they would do it. It's not hard to figure out, but, you know, these guys don't get it, and that's the problem. It's just painful, people. It's painful to listen to this, honestly. You finish work and have to listen to a bunch of jobbers. Tragic. Absolutely tragic. I know everyone's pretty much covered this, but I've put it in a separate video. Yeah, I mean, we've been over this 30 a lot, so I can't. It's a conversation I'm CBA for. Like, I've had to educate some of the mandem on it, and they still push the snake oil. So at that point, what am I supposed to do? The information's out there. I've put the information out there. Dr. Sven Olfsson has put the information out there. So, you know, it's up to people to figure it out now at some point. Like, you got to take some responsibility for your own ignorance at some point. You know, I can't keep, you know, trying to explain to people why they're wrong. It's just painful at one point, so you know, I'm not going to keep doing it unless it keeps coming up. But yeah, you know, we've seen bro push snake oil. That's what I'm going to say.
You're
Suella Braverman gets a harsh math lesson.
Talking today about police committing to pursue all reasonable lines of inquiry. Why on earth are they not doing that already?
Good morning. Very pleased to join you. Well, since I've become Home Secretary about a year ago, I've been working on a huge programme of police reform to ensure that the police get back to basics, common sense policing, as I call it. It means removing unnecessary burdens from police time, like mental health call-outs or Home Office counting rules and needless bureaucracy. It means a record...
Mental health call-outs, again, like, police do welfare checks. Like, are you saying the police aren't going to do that anymore? Or if someone has a mental health breakdown, are the police not going to get involved? Like, I genuinely don't understand what she means by this.
Number of police officers, and now it also means taking every crime seriously, ensuring that no crime is treated
It's weird that she's looking down. I can't tell what she's looking at. It feels like she's reading like a teleprompter or something.
As minor, and making sure that they follow up on every reasonable line of inquiry. This is a landmark commitment. I've challenged the police to make this agreement. It's now over to them to actually deliver this on the ground on case-by-case instances, so that victims of crime have greater confidence in the police, knowing that they will follow up on leads, that they will take theft, robbery, drug dealing.
Okay, you've been in charge for 13 years. Like, were they not doing this before? There's just more acceptance of failure, really. This is the Tories saying, we were crap, we're going to do better now.
Street-level drug crime more seriously.
But there are no extra resources, there are no extra staff to do these jobs. The police are not sitting around on their hands, are they? They are all working at the moment. So what will go as a result of this? What will they not be investigating?
Well, I disagree with you there.
Fraud, probably, let's be honest.
No extra resources. We've just recruited 20,000 additional police officers. So we now have
recruited 3,000 additional police officers. You lost 20,000 police officers, didn't you, over from 2010 up to the late...
No, this is much better. You know, this is good. It's better journalism. I think she should have mentioned police per person though. That's the key to beating the Tories. You talk about per pupil spending, per capita spending. That's where they get broken apart, because they can talk about all these big figures and stuff, but when you break it down per person, things are way worse than they were under New Labour.
Latest date. So you've lost 20,000, you've gained 23,000. So you've gained 3,000.
That's wrong. We now have a record number of police officers.
It's Home Office figures.
That's called assault, Ellie, which you're not meant to do.
Ever in the history of policing, far higher than any previous administration. So the police have the greatest number of police officers they've ever had at their disposal.
Okay.
We've also
got the Home Office figures. You've got 149,000 police officers at the moment. There were 146 in 2010. So absolutely, you have got 3,000 more officers.
Don't forget the triple market.
These are the Home Office figures.
Yeah, we've got a record number.
So she's pivoted from, we've recruited, 20,000 officers to, we have a record number. I mean, sure, you have 3,000 more than you had in 2010. I told you she was lying. I mean, it's not the great, it's not Nostradamus level predictions out here. We will know she's lying. So, this is another clip from Braverman where she talks about the unions being politicised.
Today, they say that
this is over the barge, which is, they're saying it's basically Grenfell on sea. Like, if there's a fire there, it's all over. This is what the Fire Brigade Union has said, and I think the fire brigades have said as well. And this is her response.
they have written to you expressing safety concerns. They say the barge is a death trap, potentially, and they say you won't meet them. Why not?
Bro looked so confused.
Well, let me be clear that I'm confident that the barge is safe. This barge has accommodated
the barge with Legionella disease.
People in the past, asylum seekers, oil rig workers, and barges of this kind have been used to accommodate
That's not even English, bro. They're barrows.
Asylum seekers, for example, in Scotland. So I'm very confident that this barge is safe for human
I'm confident it's safe for human habitation.
We followed all of the advice and protocols in anticipation of
23,000 backrooms police staff. Didn't know about that.
Embarkation. But let's be clear about what the Fire Brigade Union are doing. They are a Labour-affiliated union. They are carrying out a political attack on the government through their challenge right now. They want to stop us, just like we're dealing with the Ranger forces who want to stop us from...
I've had to listen to this twice today, so forgive me. I don't want to play this whole clip, but all I'm going to say is, like, yeah, they've said it's not safe. She's saying, they're a Labour-affiliated union. Like, who cares? Like, the thing's not safe. If it's so safe, give us the reports and stuff that say it's safe. Honestly. And speaking of another Home Secretary who had trouble with numbers and maths, this absolute classic. One of the first videos I've done on the channel, I think. This is so good.
The government's ongoing monitoring and testing programme that as of 9
It's a
a.m.
bit quiet.
today,
I can't boost the volume, but
there have been 974,000 tests carried out across the UK, excluding Northern Ireland.
so just in case no one heard that, we did 300,034, 974,000 tests. So clearly Home Secretary's being bad at maths is a running problem within the UK, and maybe Rishi Sunak's right. People should stay in school till they're 18 to do maths because they're not very good at it. So an absolute classic, this one. We've gone over this stuff already, I think. Did we do all of these? Yeah, we did. We did. So that's everything pretty much. So unless there's any topics that you guys want to discuss, I'm kind of out of stuff to discuss. We streamed about an hour. So it's not too bad. I'll put the chat in for live chat 16. I wonder, at this rate, we'll probably outpace Luke Thomas. He's got like 150 something. So it'll take me probably about a year or two, but I could outpace him. But yeah, if there's anything you guys want to discuss, I don't mind if there's any topics. But I think we've covered a large range of stuff, really. We've covered a large range. One sec. We've covered a large range of topics. Did anyone set questions? No one set any questions. There were no questions in the chat. But I guess it is kind of Parliament is on break, so thanks Mithril for the memberships. I really appreciate it. There were no questions, so if you have any questions, go to the community section of the channel, and you will see the community post with the thing asking for questions. So you can put your questions in there. But yeah, the single market stuff, it's pretty boring. I think I've covered it a lot on the channel. And I mean a lot. And it's kind of like, if you're still pushing at this point, you are either very incredibly ignorant to the point where you do not do a lot of reading, or you're a snake oil salesman. And why would I bother with people who sell snake oil? Because I've dealt with that guy before, and I pieced him up. He was not a challenge. Bro was obsessed with Belarus, which didn't even make sense in the context of what Belarus is, which is a vassal state of another country, a genuine vassal state. So what he was talking about makes no sense. But I guess if you say we need to rejoin the single market at least, and then look at rejoining the EU, I mean, if you push that stuff and your audience believes you, then your audience are as politically naive as you are. Let's be honest, or maybe more so because they're actually listening to you. But Point being is, this stuff is sucky. Let's be honest now. Just they don't understand much about politics. A lot of these people were became involved in politics during the referendum, but there's a lot of context and things they don't understand, and that makes them easy fodder for people. I mean, that tweet from Perkis there is probably one of the most embarrassing tweets I've seen, and I'm on Twitter a lot. This is genuinely I don't know what she was thinking when she tweeted this, and it feels like the long con of so many people just involved in trying to promote the Labour Party without realising how bad the stuff they are saying is, and then just saying, well, it'll be all right when they get into power. It's like, you're going to give them everything they want and then hope in the end it works out. That's one of the boldest strategies I've ever seen. Imagine you give someone everything they want, right? And then you hope they do the right thing in the end. What's their incentive? What's his incentive to actually, get rid of the 2-child cap if it's established he's going to keep it? Or, what's his incentive to get rid of austerity, to not change capital gains tax, amongst other things? Yeah, I saw that they want to lower environmental standards to increase house building or something stupid. I'm kind of I agree we need to get the Tories out, but I won't replace them with the ghost of George Osborne. I think oil workers were on one in Aberdeen. I mean, yeah, there were a lot less of them on that ship, and even still, it doesn't take away from the fact that ship should never have been used. I just surely you can come up with a better solution than a prison barge. You can make I don't know, you can make it more like one of those cruise ships or something. I don't know, but you can come up with something better than that. I mean, if that thing goes on fire, then it's all over for everyone on there. They're dead. It doesn't make sense, especially given the price that we paid for it. You could have got a cruise liner for that price, honestly. But yeah, this country's in such a bad state, and like I said, it's not like Clement Attlee came in after World War II and said, "Oh, this country's a mess, guys. I looked in the books, and we can't afford to do an NHS. Sorry." It's not what happened. Even New Labour still spent money. They shouldn't have done things like PFI contracts. I really hope Starmer doesn't go down that road, because PFI contracts is an absolute nightmare for people. So I genuinely do not know what to kind of make of Labour or just so many things right now. And this tweet here is just painful, isn't it? It's just, I hope they'll do the right thing in the end. I don't know. I haven't got any more answers. I'll probably head off. Probably call it a day there. If you have any questions, community section is here for you. Post it in. Nothing overly complex, like what is the meaning of the world or some stupid question like that. Just anything pretty decent. You can be non-political if you want. But yeah, I answered a question about Harry Kane under one of these. Someone asked about my thoughts on Harry Kane's move to Bayern Munich, so as long as I've got knowledge of it, I'll be able to answer it. But yeah, we'll call it a day here, and I'll catch you all hopefully next Saturday. Bye-bye.